guys, welcome to HeartCore, the human design podcast. I'm Chelle, that's Miko,
Hi, everyone.
and today we are talking about sex. But before we get into all of that, how has your week been, girly?
That's so sneaky. That was agreed upon differently. It's good. It's been very good. So I'm in Mallorca now, and then that also has something to say apparently. Nanda is my dog. Maybe he'll make an appearance at some point. So I just moved to Mallorca, which is also why a few episodes ago we talked about where is the best place for you to live. So if you haven't checked that out, go check that out. And I still don't have any of my clothes here or many of my things here in general. I just have a few suitcases, and this apartment is gorgeous. The place is amazing. The energy is good. So starting to work with a new company as well in collaboration, learning many new things about neurofeedback, and yeah, many different things going on at the moment. How was your week?
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing, first of all. My week has been interesting. I've officially been unemployed for a month, which is insane. And like, I've never not had a side project going on. So this is like really, really weird for me to not be doing anything. But I've like dove into my Italian lessons, so that's getting a little bit better, even though I grew up with the language. Um, yeah, so I've been doing that kind of on the side. Had an interview with a company, could not get a read on the people who interviewed me, and like a couple of times this week, you were just texting me being like, "So, have you heard back?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't have a heart pull. Like, I don't think this is it. I don't think they got my vibe. I don't think they understood me." So we'll see. I emailed them today, but I don't think it's for me, and that's okay. Even though the $100 an hour price tag seemed real, real nice. But, I finally did have a heart pull towards something though. So I created a business like 2 years ago, called Luna's Bowl, and it's like a meal prepping guide for doggos and like the humans of the doggos, not just for doggos to be like, this is how much I need to eat, human. But I'm thinking about like I had a poll yesterday to kind of revisit that. So leaning into that a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. So, kind of where I'm at. Other than that, just hanging out with my dog a lot, who's sleeping behind me right now.
And Luna is your dog.
Luna
That's why
is my
Luna's
dog.
bowl.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Have you guys not met our dogs? I feel like we might have to post a. We'll post it at the end of this video. If you guys watch it, we'll post individual selfies with our respective dogs for
And then
you
we'll
to
just drag
enjoy.
them into the camera.
Not gonna wake her up, then she's gonna be moody.
Oh, yeah. Never wake a sleeping baby. Rule number one. It's already been a month. That is crazy.
Yeah.
I just figured it's been maybe a week and a half.
Bruh. Yeah, no, it's been like a full month and I'm like actually getting bored now. So I need something in my life.
I figured it wouldn't last long.
Yeah, no.
You said, I can do that. I can just relax for a bit.
A
Yeah.
month is my limit, apparently.
Yeah. Good. People are going to love Luna's Bowl.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool. It needs a little bit of rebranding and tweaking, but I think it'll be cool.
Okay. Should we get started with the actual subject of today?
We should. We
Sex,
shall. We
hugs,
will.
and rock and roll. It actually aligns pretty well with the three streams. Let's take it from the beginning. First, before we getting into the subject, I think it's important to note that conditioning plays a huge role in all of this. So even if you feel like you can't align with what we're going to be sharing here, bear in mind that we are here to talk about the genetic imprint of what your body wants. So it's not what your mind wants, it is what your body wants. And that makes a huge difference because we're talking about sex, and sex is physical. Yes, it's also emotional because everything we're going to be talking about is connected to the emotional solar plexus. But in the first place, it is what your genes want and what they need to reproduce. And that is going to look different for a tribal individual, for an individual, and a collective individual. The conditioning that we're talking about already starts in the womb. It starts in childhood. So depending on who you have in the first 7 years of your life as your role models, doesn't have to be biological parents, but generally people that show you what a relationship looks like. Those are going to impact you a lot. Not just from what you see and experience, it's also culturally related, of course. What does the culture around you believe about genders or relationships? But it's also about an energetic imprint. So a lot of times what you will see is that people choose their parents because it's as an energetic imprint. So it's not just the Freudian saying of women want to be with their fathers, men want to be with their mothers, but it is actually a genetic imprint. And it doesn't really matter which sexual orientation you have. So if you are oriented towards the same sex, then you may want to be with someone like your mother if you're a woman, or vice versa for a man. The point here is that energetically, you will have a certain kind of impact, which comes from your caretakers and the people that you look up to in some way. So, or the people that raised you. You may not really look up to them, but they raised you and they imprinted you energetically. So you energetically feel drawn towards certain types of energies. And because we're talking about the physical body here, it is unconscious. So everything that is read in your chart shows your physical body as well. But it is unconscious, whereas the personality side is conscious. And this is where there's so much conflict in all of this, because your body may want one thing, but your personality may want a totally different thing. And does want a totally different thing. Because when you're looking at your profile, you will be able to see that one of them is in your unconscious and the other is in your consciousness. And that creates the challenge, one of the challenges. There's more, but that's one of the challenges. So who you have in your life impacts you a lot, as well as where you were born and raised also impacts you a lot.
Within your human design, right? You were asked where you were born as part of recognizing like your design as a whole, right? So of course that is going to significantly impact you as a human, as a person, and the constellation that existed in the sky when you were born as well. I think coming back to like the physical environment piece of all of that is super important too, but then compound that into the conditioning that may have occurred in that physical environment, as well as if you were born in a city versus a rural area, right? Coming back and thinking about those cultural differences that may have come from that physical environment as well, in addition to the pieces of it that you did not have control of, right? Like where the stars were, where the planets were when you were born or conceived, or 90 days before your uh your birth as well, your design date.
Yeah, and additionally to that, when it comes to environment and transits, when we're talking about the sexual aspects, in the now, you always need to consider where you feel the sexual desire. So if you are out in the bar and let's assume you're a projector, so you don't have the sacral defined, and you meet another projector and they also don't have the sacral defined, and when you come together as a pair, you still don't define the sacral. The people around you are still impacting you. So where you are in space and time has an impact on how you will perceive the others. So you may have a fiery, passionate emotion that is coming out in you while you're connecting with this other projector, but it could just be because of the environment that you're in, because of the other people around you that are impacting you. And it can even be the location. So if you meet someone in Australia, you may have a very different feeling towards that person when you meet them again in Russia, for example. And that is a very different climate situation already, but it's also an energetic difference. So keeping your environment in mind when you're connecting with someone or when you feel drawn to someone sexually, it's important to just keep that in mind. Additionally to that, the planets that are currently transiting also have an impact on you. So let's assume that you are connecting with someone and you're falling in love with them and you're starting a relationship with them. And further down the line, you kind of feel a disconnect. This can happen because at the point in time where you met the person and you started to fall in love with the person, this planet may cause a split definition to become a single definition. So if you as a couple come together and create a split definition, if at the point in time that you meet, you become a single definition, you feel more whole, quote unquote. And when that planet leaves this transit, the gate that is bridging your splits, basically, or your split in the relationship, you may feel less whole later down the line. And that can also cause challenges. So the important thing about all of this that we're going to be sharing today is the awareness of all of this. It doesn't mean that something can or can't work, but this is going to show you a very high level insight into sex, into how you want to bond with people, at least on a physical level. Sex is physical and the body has a say in a lot of it. And often we're going to connect most of it with the mind and the personality. The mind is not what really takes charge in all of this. So it's also hopefully going to help you to cut yourself some slack in certain situations, or to just really understand certain statements that your partner is making and that you are also making, to understand them a bit better, or also the desires that they may have or that you may have. Today we're just focusing on sex. So let's see how this develops further in your understanding as well of the sexual aspects in your relationship. I found it really interesting to look at it from my perspective for my relationship, but also just in general, gaining a better understanding of, hey, those are just what our genes want. And yeah, we can either choose to go with it or go against it. That's where the challenges start.
So we're going to go through a couple of points that are pretty important and will set us on the right path throughout for this entire conversation. So whether you have a defined or undefined sacral is going to be extremely important, because it's not going to be the end all be all. None of this is absolute, but if you have a defined sacral, you're probably going to be ready to go all the time, or at least 90+% of the time. I thought I was going to be the one cracking up in this episode, and I already got Miko cracking up. Oh my God. Versus an undefined sacral center, where you may be sexually charged, but it's not going to always be all the time. And I can say, as a non-sacral being, that's probably accurate. But again, this is a component into determining what your sexual nature is going to be. It is more often that someone with a defined sacral center, or when two people come together and have a defined sacral center together, that they will be a more sexual couple or in a more sexual relationship, versus two people who come together who do not have a defined sacral center together.
Yeah, the important thing to also note here, if you don't have the sacral defined, but your partner has it defined, is that you're taking it in and you're amplifying it. So you may actually be the one that is even more sexual than your sacrally defined partner. So yes, totally correct that if it's undefined, it's more of a wave. So sometimes you will feel like you want to be sexually active, other times you won't feel like having sex. So this is a great thing to keep in mind. I personally have the feeling that when I am with someone that has a sacral defined, I often feel like I want it more than the other person, and they already want it a lot. So I just really, I can feel the amplification, but it only happens when the other person really desires you. So that's, again, a very important point, because even the defined sacral, when they're not in the mood, they're not in the mood. And in understanding how they are defined, it's also super important. If they have an inner authority that is emotional, if it's a pure sacral generator, or if it's a manifesting generator, with the spleen defined as well, or something like this, it always plays a role. It's just important to bear in mind that the whole chart comes into play. Yeah, I feel like the sacral plays a huge role, but as an undefined sacral being in a relationship with a sacral person, the other person needs to have this desire for you, and then you can amplify it. And if that isn't given, you will feel it. You will feel the difference being with someone that isn't interested or someone that is very interested.
Okay. So, as far as sexual maturity goes, this is one thing dudes do earlier than women. So, a man reaches sexual maturity at about 18, whereas women reach it about 31. So, ladies, if you said you peaked in high school, or if you said you peaked in college, that is inaccurate. Keep on waiting for your 30s. They say it's the best decade. So, that's my 2 cents there. And as far as the sacral center on a biological level, think testes in men and ovaries in women, if we're just thinking from a pure biological, rounding this back to the genetics POV of things. So in last episode, we discussed heavily in detail gates 59 and 27. Today we are going to kind of just glaze over them and explore a bit more of the right side of the chart. So you cut the chart down the middle and only go to the right, those are all of the gates that we were talking about today. So we're going to go for a quick high level on gate 59, which is dispersion, the gate of sexuality, and the line 59-6, also called like the baby line, if you will. Think of like fertile myrtle. One of my friends told me that a couple of years ago, and I loved that phrase. She's like, I'm fertile myrtle. I'm like, huh. I wonder if she has this full channel. She must. And gate 27 on the other side, we'll be talking about this in our next episode more in depth, but think of this as nourishment, the gate of caring and having the nurturing side of our sexuality taken care of. Again, we're focusing on that next week. This week is just down and dirty sex. So all reproductive possibilities for humans run through the emotional solar plexus. What does that mean? That means you got waves. You got emotional waves you got to be aware of and feel through. And that means that emotions are sexuality and that sex is emotions.
And additionally to that, sex is emotions, and food plays a huge role in all of this as well. So if your emotional well-being is off balance, look at your sex life, look at your nutrition, and look at your breath. These are the 3 areas that you have to take a look at. You will find a disbalance in one or all of these aspects. And then you can work both on your sex life and also on your emotional well-being, which I find super, super fascinating, because one thing that is mentioned a lot when we're talking about sexual aspects in human design is how interconnected it is with food. So this is what I find super fascinating in human design. When you are going through all this knowledge in human design, it also makes sense from a cultural perspective, and sometimes it opens your eyes to certain things. So different cultures or different areas in the world, when there is more poverty, the rate of children usually goes up. The less you have, the more sex you have, and the more kids come to be born. The more wealthy you are, the less children you often have. So when you look at very wealthy families, a lot of times they usually have 1 or 2 kids. Of course, there are always the exceptions. It also depends on your religious views and how you look at contraception and things like this. But in general, this is a very good rule of thumb that the more you have materially or food-wise, resource-wise, the less sex you will have a lot of times, which I find really fascinating, because we're going to be looking at this aspect throughout these streams that we're looking at, the tribal stream, the individual stream, and the collective stream. And you will see how this plays a role in each of them, and how when you start to have less sex, a lot of times you may actually go out for dinner more, or lunches more, or just enjoy the food aspect in some ways more. So you still try to fill your cup, quote unquote, by doing it through nutrition. instead of sex. And I'm not saying that this is the right way to fill your cup. Food or sex is still external things to fill your cup. The real way to fill your own cup is, and still remains and will always be, looking inwards and figuring out what it is you're lacking from the inside, and not trying to fill it with external things. But what we're also going to see in one of these streams in particular is really that there is a challenge with nutrition. So in one of these gates and streams, we're going to be talking about bulimia, anorexia, and overeating as well as part of the challenge. So really trying to reach spirit. So it's going to be about gate 55, but you're going to try to reach spirit. And what I mean by that is also essentially trying to reach your inner self through overdoing it with food, overdoing it with sex, or underdoing it with food. So fasting, or living a monk lifestyle, just cutting sex out of your life because you feel like this is the way to do it. So one thing that we're going to see further down the line is gate 55, where a lot of people are trying to compensate reaching spirit or reaching your inner self by trying to eat too much or eat too little, having way too much sex, or just going into monk mode. It's also often where you find eating disorders such as bulimia or anorexia, or just overindulging or trying to stuff your body to have emotional sensations in some way. So yeah, I find this interconnectedness super fascinating. And when I had first heard of this, I was really intrigued by all of this. So we're just going to do a very quick recap of gate 59, just because it is an important part of the sexual aspects. And as we mentioned, we're just going to be looking at the right side of the chart. So when you're looking at it, the right side of the chart, everything that is connected to the emotional solar plexus, because this is really where the sexual energy is coming together. So in gate 59, moving towards gate 6, this is the baby making line. Now, if you're looking at the screen, you can also see what we're talking about. So we have the baby making line here, 59 to gate 6. It means that it is a very, very fertile channel. So if you do have that in your chart, just make sure that if you don't want to have kids, to protect yourself, and to also really be mindful of who you step into bed with, because it's very, very fertile. So wait out your emotional wave. It means that you are emotionally defined, and make sure that this is the right type of person. With all of the sexual endeavors, it is really important to be mindful of who you sleep with, because it can lead to babies. Of course, we all know that. If you paid attention in school, pretty sure you're aware of that. So, but especially if you have gate 59-6, the full channel, just, be careful, because it can easily lead to kids. We're only talking about the sexual aspects here today, so we're not going to go into the depth of what else this channel means, because in human design you can really get lost in the lines and the color tones and bases, but also in general in the gate itself it can have different kinds of directions that you may want to point out. So here today we're only talking about sex. And on the other side of that, we also have gate 6. So this is the root of all the emotional waves. It has all 3 waves included into one. We have the tribal wave, the individual wave, and the collective wave. So it also means that gate 6, if it is defined in your chart, it is somewhat of a formatting energy when it comes to intimacy. We have 3 formatting channels, so don't mistake them with that. And I hope I'm not misleading you by calling it a formatting energy. But the 3 formatting channels are connecting the root to the sacral. Here, we are still talking about, if your gate 6 is defined, about a gate that has a huge impact on all of your sexual activities and decisions. It also, of course, depends whether your emotional solar plexus is defined or not. Because if your emotional solar plexus is not defined, it means that there is no consistent energy flow towards this gate. So if someone steps into your life that has an emotionally defined solar plexus, it's going to be more active, and it is going to influence you as well as the other person. What that means exactly is that each line within gate 6 has a specific energy towards it. It has a specific wave towards it. And you will feel, if you have gate 6, but you have line 1 in gate 6, you will go from feeling weak to feeling strong and back again. So the interesting aspect about this is that another person coming into your life may fix you into one of those positions. So someone may pull you into detriment, and another person may pull you into exaltation. If it just stays neutral, it means that you may sometimes feel weak, and other times you may feel strong. And when you're looking at the rest of all of the other gates, you can connect these aspects to one another. So depending on whether your emotional wave feels weak or strong at the point in time that you're feeling high or low in your emotional wave, it can pull you towards one aspect or towards another, but it can also pull the other person towards one side or the it's a really important part to keep in mind, because what can happen is that when you're meeting someone and they usually feel very strong in a certain area of their life, but you're pulling them into detriment. So suddenly their strength turns into a weakness. And that is going to impact the other areas of their chart in a sexual way. And when they feel strong, but they are, for example, a fourth line profile. So let's take the profiles into consideration. So when you make them feel weak in an area and they're a fourth line profile, they may feel like they don't want to be your confidant. And on the other side, if you're making them feel strong, they may feel like they want to be your confidant. So fourth line profile is confidant or not. It's about wanting to build a friendship or not. You can see how the sixth gate plays a huge role in all of this, because if one person makes the other person feel a certain way, everything else will fall into place as well. So this is what we're talking about, the emotional wave. The emotional wave always goes from hope to pain and back up again and back to pain and hope and pain. This is what an emotional being does feel. So the right decision, and this is why it's so important to wait for your clarity, wait for that emotional wave to just figure out what it is you truly want, because making a decision in the hope aspect is as detrimental as making it in the pain aspect. You're not going to be able to make the right kinds of decisions this way. I'm going to give a really good example later down the line when we're talking about the flirtatious aspects of sex, because this is where I feel it's going to make a lot of sense when you talk to someone when you're in the hope element of this wave or when you're in the pain element of this wave. So for now, let's move on and start talking about the tribal circuitry.
Okay, on to the tribal circuitry. So Miko mentioned earlier that food and sex are interconnected, and within the tribal circuitry, we can definitely see this as well. And the whole tribal circuitry is a part of the stream of sensitivity. Sexuality here may not be part of the bargain. So we're talking about the 40-37 coming off the ego into the emotional solar plexus. And this is all about bargaining. So sex here is kind of part of the bargain for someone, kind of done under the cloak of darkness, under the bed sheets, underneath the surface at night, not something necessarily out in the open. And It's anticipated, it's assumed, it's a handshake, if you will. As Miko mentioned earlier, think of sex here as it's just something that we're doing internally to keep the species going. And that's kind of the bargain that comes into play a bit more here. So we're going to start lower down the stream with the 4919 coming from the root center to the emotional center, the channel of the bride and groom. This channel is all about having the resources and establishing communities to be able to align those resources. This is the foundation of the tribe, the root to the emotion piece of it. And with the 19, the gate of needing sexual resources. So you alluded to this earlier a bit with the flirtation piece of it. So if you'd like to expand upon that a bit.
So the gate 19 is someone who loves to flirt, but they will only flirt with the people that have the right resources. So what that means is, no, they're not manipulative. They're also not just out for money, for example. So don't misunderstand that. But resources can also be emotional support or any kind of resource you can think of. And the 19 likes to, however, keep their options open. So also bear in mind that even if you have this gate, it depends which planet is defining it, how prevalent it is in your chart. There's a lot that plays a role into it. Is the root defined or undefined in your chart? All of these things. So in the gate 19, flirting is very, very, very important. And as I said, it's not going to flirt with everyone. It's just going to flirt with certain people. And on the other side, we have gate 49. And gate 49, on the other hand, is very different in its energy. So if you know a little bit about human design and you know the channels, you will also understand that every channel has so every channel has a theme, and then you have two sides of that coin. So let's assume one channel is the coin, and if you look at one gate, you have one side of the coin, and if you look at the other gate, you have the other side of the coin. And when it comes together, you have the full coin. So that's when you can actually pay with it, to take that analogy all the way. Celestina just pulled up the chart of a very, very famous individual in the sex scene, I would say, or someone that really heavily impacted the way that the world got to know about sex, especially teenage boys. Looking at his chart, you can see lots of activation when it comes to all things sexual, except for the only thing that he doesn't really have is the 3740 and the 59-6. Lucky for him.
Probably a good thing.
Yep. So we have the 1949, we have 3955, we have gate 30, we have gate 22, we have gate 36. So much activation. Of course, we have to also take into consideration which planets are defining these elements and how often they're defined and which lines are defining or defined in his chart. All of these things become important. But for now, let's go back to gate 19 and gate 49 and hone in on this flirtation side. So we mentioned that gate 19 loves to flirt with the right people, and gate 49, on the other hand, is going to look at gate 19 if they are encountering a gate 19 flirting with them. It's going to look at gate 19 and it's going to be like, hey, if we're going to do this, you need to stop flirting with everyone because now you're mine. We are talking about a very, very tribal energy here. The 1949 and the 3740 are the tribal stream. And the tribal stream is a lot about possession, so owning something or someone, especially when it comes to the 3740. We are talking about the ego circuitry, and the ego is heavily about material things, but also about this is mine, this is what is good for me, and this is not mine, this is not what is for me. And it's also about making promises. If you have it defined, then you can make promises. If it's undefined, you shouldn't be making promises. This also plays a role in everything sexual or everything marital. for that matter. So when we're looking at gate 19 from the example that I had earlier regarding the waves, when you're on your high wave and you're flirting with someone, this could be one way of going about things. So you enter a room and you have, if you're, well, whether you're a man or a woman, if you're interested in men, you have 5 men sitting there and you're not interested in 4 of them, but you're interested in 1 of them. So when you're on your high wave, your approach may be, I'm going to actively pursue that person and flirt with them. If you're on your low wave, what can happen is that you're actually taking a different approach and you're starting to ignore the person that you want to have the attention from. So this is going to get a bit complicated, but let's assume the gate 19 flirts with the person passively. So they are ignoring them. The gate 49, if they are in their high wave, they may see it as a game. They may be like, oh, okay, they're ignoring me. I'm going to see it as a game. I'm going to try to get their attention. If they're in their low wave, they may instead feel like, okay, hell no, I don't want to have anything to do with that person because they're ignoring me. So this is how different and how impactful these waves are, and how it also, additionally to environment and additionally to the transits, it's important how, in which mindset you are meeting someone. And I've said this so many times to myself, because just think about a normal day for you. When you're going through your day and you're having a good day, if someone encounters you on one of your good days, you're going to be very different to them than when they're encountering you on one of your bad days. And it all matters. So just imagine you're meeting the perfect person for you on one of your bad days, and instead of being nice to them, you're being rude to them, but only because it's a bad day. That's it. And if you're having a good day, the whole thing would have been very different. Additionally to that, I also believe in the universe. So if it's really the person that is meant for you, you're going to have a good day anyways. Like everything's going to work out, but that's just besides the point. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. Do you understand what I'm saying here, Celestina?
I have a real life example of this. So this is fun. Cool. So this is me and David.
Oh.
Yeah. So he has the 19, I have the 49. They're both in our unconscious side. But real life story about this. I mean, when we were dating, I wasn't seeing anyone else. He wasn't really seeing anyone else, but he was definitely more flirtatious with women, like our friends, than I am. Like, I'm not that person at all, right? Like, if you want me, come at me. But yeah, so like when he and I started to take things a bit more seriously, I was like, it must have been in my emotional high slash his emotional high, you know? And it's cool that that maybe happened, but it's interesting seeing that. And then fast forward maybe like 5 or 6 years into marriage, we were in Germany and he had a friend who was a girl. That's fine, whatever. But there was one day where we were out with a group of people, like it was like our going away party. And like the whole way we walked maybe like a mile and a half to get to this restaurant from our house, like with everyone. And the whole way there, he was like talking to her the whole time. And I was like, ooh, I do not like that vibe. And I don't know what the fuck they were talking about. You know what I mean? But it's interesting because I don't have this consciously in my design. I don't think it's part of me, but it's so interesting to now have this reflection back and be like, ooh, that's what made me feel icky. And I wonder, he probably doesn't feel it the same way I do. I feel like that's kind of just his nature, is to like talk to people and befriend people and not necessarily thinking that it's in a flirtatious way, but me viewing it as in this, yo, we married line, you know, like you are my husband, I am your wife. What are you doing talking to other people? It's happened several times. And it's usually just like with people from work. If he like goes and plays like a different sport with them, or if he like goes surfing with them, I kind of need to suss these people out. And if they don't want to be friends with me, then I feel like there's something sus there. You know what I mean? It just feels icky. And again, I don't care if he has female friends, but I want them to be open to at least being nice to me. too. You know what I mean? If not, that feels gross. And it feels like there's something sinister happening there. So that's a personal reflection on how the 4919 feels for me, only having the 49 piece of it, but being in a decade plus long relationship, having this in my life, if that makes sense.
And that was really interesting to see a real life example. At
Yeah.
least for me, I hope you listeners also enjoyed that, because it really gives you an insight. And yes, the 19 has this tendency of flirting. And the 49, as we mentioned, it's like, okay, you need to stop flirting now. You're just like, this is mine. This is, and it's just a dynamic. It's, as Celestina said, it's not even conscious. And it's, but this feeling still comes up because yes, this is the deal. This is the bargain. This is the, you stop flirting as soon as we come together. And when you're looking
Like to
at the
take a line
keynotes,
from Spice Girls, when to become one. I had to continue.
yes, and it fits really well with the 49 because here it's about marry/divorce. And those are the options. So for the 49, when it sets the boundaries and it's like, okay, hey, 19, stop flirting. And you either have to obey my rules to make it really harsh, but there are certain rules. When you're stepping into a marriage, then you do have certain rules, you do have certain boundaries, and that's normal and natural. And it's very, very tribal in nature. So when you align with the rules, so the 49 will also only accept a certain 19 when they know that they are able to align with their rules. So, or what it is they really want. Once the 19 has found a 49 that can provide them with the resources, and the 49 is okay, you can have my resources, but only if you listen to what I need and want, then we can make this work. But as soon as we touch, and this is where touch in the tribal circuitry is extremely important. So any relationship that has tribal circuitry, touch becomes very, very important. More in certain couples than in other couples. But in order to stop the flirting, or the flirting stops automatically as soon as there is touch. And if you just look at flirtation, it's never about touch. Or yeah, it could be like a little touch of the shoulder, but it's usually it's about a look. It's about a gesture, like being flirtatious, but or touching yourself, like flicking the hair back, or taking out my earpiece.
Are you a hair flicker? Are you a hair flicker?
I don't know. I don't know. It's just a very I don't think I'm a hair flicker. I think I'm a
Definitely not
more
hair flicker.
of a look person, or
I can see that.
I'm a tease. I figured out that I'm a tease, and I didn't really realize that I was a tease until I was looking at my human design. I was like, I think I may be actually a tease. So yeah, the 19 flirts, and it stops with a touch. So when the 49 and the 19 start touching, that's when it's kind of like, okay, you're mine. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing your personal take on it. And it is very interesting to again see this, how it plays out. Because if you're just looking at what we're sharing here on the screen, David has the 19 and Celestina has the 49, just to explain this a little. Hugh Hefner. So what we can see here as well, we have the 1949, and yes, it's about the flirtation, and it's also about the you're mine, which he was very clear about, but it's not about marriage in his chart. So while the 1949 is about the groom and bride, so it's kind of like a thing where you flirt and then you lay the boundaries and you're mine, but there is nothing in his 4037. So the 4037 is where really this contract is made, where yes, these are the rules, these are the regulations. So it's not just about the principles, but it's also about actually holding to this contract. So the 1949, it's connected to the animal kingdom, and it also has this animalistic kind of sex thing. So if we would just be stuck in the tribal aspect, then we would just have animalistic sex and just to reproduce. And also what is interesting is that the 49 is the butcher. So on the one hand you have the 19 that takes care of the animals, and on the other side you have the butcher. And in relationship terms, which is very interesting, is that if you don't obey my rules, I'm gonna kill you. It's actually a thing. Like not literally kill you, but you're done.
Hence divorce.
Hence divorce.
So the other half of the tribal circuit is the marriage contract. So 4037, going from the ego center to the emotional center. This channel is all about resources. Everything tribal is always about resources. It's also about possession. This is mine, you are mine, she, he is mine, these are our children, etc. So gate 40 is the gate of sexual denial. This could also be related heavily into masturbation and wanting to be left alone. So handling yourself, doing your own thing. This is also the gate of the stomach. So the more you have, as in like resources, the more you have, the less children you have. Because the moment that the resources are there, the sex is replaced. And Miko's talked more heavily in detail about this earlier in this episode. So for example, food can take the place of sexuality. It's important to be mindful of that. So if you, and not in like the, we're going out on dates instead of having sex now, in the regard of, are you trying to fill a void within with food? Or are you doing the opposite of it? Are you, as Miko mentioned earlier, are you on that monk life? Not even necessarily that monk life, but are you restricting yourself too much, right? Is there anorexia? Is there bulimia? Is there some type of food-related disorder? So just take note of that. Again, I'm not saying that it's gonna happen in either direction, but just be aware. Be aware of the possibilities there. So the 40 will fall in love with the other half of it, the 37, as long as it honors the agreement. So you recall earlier when we started talking about tribal circuitry, it's all about this and that there needs to be some type of barter, right? The 40 is going to offer its love when there's loyalty on the other end. That is the agreement. So this is the marriage channel, right? So there needs to be that contract, that this for that on the other side. And you need to know that the other person's going to be loyal in the marriage. If you honor, I will love you. Oh, I really want to sing, and you know, like that's where I'm feeling it right now. But yeah, there is no I love you, will you honor me, right? It needs to be an if statement. If you honor me, if you are loyal to me, I will love you. And that's it. End all be all. That is the bargain. That is the agreement. Yeah, so after all, it is a bargain. And then on the opposite side, the gate 37 is the gate of sexual affection. So a gate of cuddling. Oh man, I wish David had 37. Not a cuddler. Anyway, gate 37, always wanting to be hugged, related to mouth and friendship. So this channel as a whole, it's about touch. It is about hands and mouth. It's about communicating through touch, not whispering sweet nothings into each other's ears. Though that would be romantic, that's not what this is about. It's rooted in communication by touch, which in the shadow state can mean physical abuse, hitting each other, and assault. So not ideal in the shadow side.
Yeah, this is something that I would really love to make a study on. How many people that are abusive actually do have channel 4037, because, or generally tribal activations, because touch is such an important aspect. That is, however, when you're living in your shadow. So bear that in mind. Just because you have your gate 4037 doesn't mean that you're going to be abusive. It just is something that if you're living in your shadow, as well as having been conditioned in a certain way, then you may have the tendency to also express yourself, communicate in a violent way. Usually this channel 4037, as Celestina mentioned, it's about cuddling, it's about touching. It's so important to touch for these individuals. And along with using your mouth in relationships. So if you do have 4037, the 37 stands for the mouth. So if you have gate 37, you may enjoy going down on someone more or kissing them more in-depthly than someone who doesn't have this activation. On the other hand, if your partner has the 37 but you don't, you may pick it up and start to really enjoy oral sex more, or just kissing more passionately. Yeah, I just love these dynamics. I'm so fascinated by it. And as we mentioned as well, the tribal circuitry really is about sex as a necessity more than it is about sex as a pleasure a lot of times. Again, it depends what else is going on in your chart, but it is just part of the bargain. So you can still enjoy sex. It doesn't mean that you don't, but it just is part of the bargain. And if you agree upon having sex twice a week, for example, and suddenly it becomes once a week and you start to worry and to wonder, and this is as well where part of the challenges come up because the bargain is not being held up. An additional note is that each gate has a certain theme to it. So each of these circuitries will have a love and hate side to it. In the tribal circuitry, we have gate 40, which has this love and hate aspect. This is kind of like the root source of the circuitry. In the emotional, so in the individual circuitry that we're going to talk about next, we have gate 55 as the root. And in the Kundalini sex circuitry, the collective circuitry, we have the 41 as this love-hate gate, or the root of this whole experience. Each gate will have a certain element to it, and when you're then connecting the sixth gate, the wave of the emotions that are flowing through you with these gates as a detriment and an exaltation, you will always have these two sides to it, and you can fluctuate from one to the other, and it just really depends on your emotional wave or that of your partner. So just to keep that in mind.
Alrighty. So in the individual process, it's all about hearing. It is emotional and it is romantic. Here, if the lovemaking, though, is not good, the romance is over. It's all about love, but damn, the sex better be good for those who are experiencing this individual wave, if you will. So the romance piece of it has to be with strangers and not necessarily the girl next door. There's more to uncover, there's more depth with strangers, there's more to talk about, there's more to uncover. Those with this stream, if adultery occurs in a relationship, it will most likely be with strangers, versus in the tribal stream, it's going to be someone that they know from the village. By that, it could mean your apartment complex or just someone who's in your tribe. It doesn't have to be the literal village. Those with individual, because hearing is an important aspect of this. Breath is also going to play an important role in this stream. So music, mantras, words of love. I'm going to add grunting to that because that's, you know what I mean? Like anything that's coming from the mouth into someone's ears, probably important as well. Those with this individual energy can have a really intense romance sans sex, because if the sex sucks, the romance piece of it is over, right? The idealized piece of it is over. So I think that that's going to be important to remember as well. And mystery as a whole is important. So sharing your story, listening to the other person's story, and uncovering that more emotional depth is going to be really important for this person. Channel 5539, the channel of stimulation. So the gate 55 piece of this is the gate of sexual moodiness, the design of being fickle. Basically, this is the root of this, as Miko said earlier. So the I love you, I hate you gate, and it connects whether someone will be turned on or turned off by the person that they're with. They also need to know that they can turn others on, right? It's the being seen, feeling seen as the individual. And when individuals can't grab the attention of others, they feel like they're dying inside. They feel like they are unseen, that they are just not there, not meant to be, and it can be a very impactful feeling to them. It can also manifest as an eating disorder when they're trying to find spirit through a different path. So when they're not feeling as though their desires are being reciprocated externally, relying on some other methods to feel seen, to feel whole, is what people may lean into. When that person is trying to seek something out again through food or through restriction, their spirit is broken, like their internal spirit, if you will, is broken. Whereas if this happens in a marriage, hearts will be broken with regard to these gates. The gate 39 is the gate of needing sexual attention, which is why it's the other half of the 55, the design of teasing. You alluded to this earlier. Did you want to explore this one?
Gate 39 is known as someone who provokes another. And it's in the normal context or non-sexual context, you usually talk about, okay, if you provoke someone and they react badly to you, then they're not for you. So this is kind of how you can hush out, okay, this person is for me, this person is not for me. And you don't even necessarily provoke actively. You don't necessarily say anything. It's sometimes just you stepping into the room where you provoke someone without saying anything. It's just your energy that steps in, that provokes someone. And it can be something, for example, where when you step in, you provoke them because they start to feel jealous of you, or that kind of energy. And it can provoke them. The reason why you have gate 39 is because you can provoke someone into reaching another level. So gate 55 is about spiritual. It's about spirit. It's about spiritual processes. It's about spiritual growth and how to connect to spirit and source. And gate 39 helps people reach this next level. So without any kind of prompt. So if you're looking at self-growth processes, you often need something to prompt you to realize, hey, this is where I still need to grow. This is where I still need to evolve. So this is why when you are doing a lot of self-growth practices, but you just sit on top of a hill by yourself, you think you've got it all figured out and you think you're the most amazing person and you've just reached your inner balance. But as soon as you step down that hill, re-enter society, you will see if you've really grown, if you've really reached your inner balance, or if it was just super easy because you were all by yourself and nothing was there to provoke you. So this is kind of how gate 39 works. It really is about provoking someone to level up. And on the sexual side, it is also about teasing, sending teasing pictures, for example, where you know that the other person is not going to be able to do anything about it. Or just, as it's a bit of a flirtatious side as well, but it's really about kind of giving a little bit of a taste and not fully giving in. So this is kind of how this 39 is teasing. And the 55, so in my opinion as well, when it comes to the 39-55 channel, there's a lot to do with sexual energies being able to lead to another level as well. So you are able to connect with someone and bring your sex life even to another level in a tantric way. It's not a tantric channel. There are tantric channels in human design. I believe it's not a tantric channel, actually. Let me correct that, because there are certain tantric channels in human design, but even those are not necessarily connected to the traditional tantra that we would know from India. And if I'm saying the traditional tantra that we know from India, it also implies that it hasn't been smutted, it hasn't been dirtied by the Western cultures, because in the West, a lot of people are connecting Tantra to sex, and that is not what Tantra is. Tantra has a sexual element to it, but when you're really breaking Tantra down to what it is about an exchange of energy. And that is, again, why we're going back to the breath, because breath is such a powerful exchange of energy. And we are in the individual circuitry. It's all about romance. It is about words. Words require breath. Communication requires breath, as in verbal communication. Breathing exercises are super important in this individual stream. Generally, breathing exercises to connect deeper with your partner are amazing because the breath is your life force energy as well. So connecting with the other through your breath and connecting with yourself through your breath is just crucial. And that's what Tantra is about. Well, the tiny, tiny, tiny little drop into the bucket of what Tantra is about, but that is more aligned description of what the root of Tantra is. So it's really about connecting with the other's energy and interchanging it, but also to connect with your own. First and foremost, actually, to connect with your own energy, to balance your own energy, to then be able to exchange and share it with another, and to then be able to bring it into the physical realm. So at first it is an energy, then it can become physical. And as we mentioned before, this is where a lot of eating disorders lie. So yeah, just keep that in mind. If you do have an eating disorder, to look at your breath, look at sexual elements as well. But first and foremost, look at your breath and breathing patterns. Maybe include more singing, more mantras. And it sounds so counterintuitive because eating disorders, a lot of people feel like they need to start with the physical body. But a lot of times tackling this challenge by actually trying to tackle the challenge itself can be more difficult than looking at it from a different perspective and starting with something that has nothing in your conscious mind, nothing to do with the actual challenge. So really look at your breathing patterns, maybe include mantras and singing into it, breathing exercises, and also look at the sexual aspects. How can you reconnect with your sexual energy? How can you reconnect with your inner energy? What is it that you really need? What is it that you really desire that you are compensating by adding or depriving food from your diet? So again, looking at the chart that we have up on the screen right now, we are looking at Hugh Hefner, and a lot of his actions were very provocative when it came to the Playboy in itself. The time that he released the Playboy was also very daring. And on the other side, we have the Gate 55. And so this is actually something that he valued from his personality element. And I would have loved to know more about this aspect. I mean, all I know about the Playboy was that they had a page that you could unfold. I know that there were a lot of nude images in there, but I also felt like a lot of times it was very well photographed. It was still in some way beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful, or it is. I don't know. It's probably still out there. But I looked at it when I was very young, and a lot of times when we were traveling, this was one of the magazines that my father could get. On the airplane, we couldn't, but we would look at the joke section. So this was another thing. There was lots of funny jokes in there. I don't remember a single one of those, but that was the section that we were allowed to look at. So I don't know how much spirituality was involved in his life or how he felt this was playing a part, but he was provoking people with his actions. And I honestly also don't know the backstory of why he decided to launch this magazine, because I feel like it was far more than just having a sex magazine. It was still classy. Maybe it was also just to normalize the human body in some way. I don't know what his intentions were behind it.
I think it's very interesting that, just looking at him as an example, how much of the emotional side of sex he has internally within him. It's very interesting to see that appear in someone, and then for that person to be such a, I guess, revolutionary sexual. I don't know if he's a sexual icon, but he definitely changed the narrative around sex and sexiness.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think he was an icon to a lot of men.
He's not my cup of tea, but also he was in his
Also,
like
you're not a man.
70s. That's fair.
No, I totally get it. I mean, I think there are also a lot of men that didn't feel like it was their cup of tea, but I think there were a lot of them that felt impressed by him being able to live in a mansion full of Playboy bunnies that were a third of his age. So going up the stream of individual circuitry of the individual side of sex, we have gate 22, the gate of grace, and it is also the gate of attentiveness and a design of infatuation. I'm pretty sure he was infatuated by the girls that were around him, but I also have a feeling that he was pretty attentive to them. As I said, I don't really know much of the things that happen in the Playboy Mansion. I don't know how he behaved towards others in his relationships, but the Gate of Grace has a lot to do with, well, it represents the left ear. And it has a lot to do with sound. So also, again, being in the right environment is crucial. If you're in an environment where there are sounds that you don't enjoy, this is going to make a big impact. It's going to make a big difference in how romantic you feel in that moment, which is just pure logic as well. So if you have an engine thumping right next to your ear all the time, it's probably not going to make you feel very sexy or romantic, not even sexy, but romantic in nature. And the gate 22 has a lot to do with taking the other in. So this is where you're breathing them in. This is where you're listening, you're paying attention to them. And what I find interesting as well is that what is recommended when it comes to communication. So when you have a hard time hearing someone, or when you really want to focus on what they are saying, turn your left ear towards them. This is an actual recommendation from which I had heard, maybe 15 years ago, and I actually do that. And I do feel like I can focus better and I can hear them better when I turn my left ear towards them, when it's in a really busy restaurant or a crowded bar or something. And not that I go to bars much anymore, but in a very loud environment, when you turn your left ear towards them, you will be able to hear them better and to also take in what they say better. And when you're looking at human design again with gate 22, this is just another reflection of this, which I find very interesting. On the other side of this channel, you have gate 12, and this is the gate of romanticism, a design of caution / abandon. Here you have someone that usually has a really nice voice. It is someone that, if they speak in the right moment, if they really wait for their inner authority, and if they follow their strategy, so first follow their strategy and then listen to their inner authority, when they do that and they speak in the right moment, they can have a huge impact. So gate 22 is there to listen, and gate 12 loves to share. Those are also individuals that often enjoy poetry. They enjoy music. The 12th gate may create poetry and music. The 22nd may enjoy listening to poetry and music, or reading it, or just taking it in. It's a very romantic circuitry.
My parents have that, and I think that's cute.
Oh, that is
My dad is
cute.
the full channel, and my mom has the 22. So we've already discussed the tribal beings as accepted because it gives a stable environment for children, the individual beings as they're accepted as they expand the gene pool with strangers, and finally, the collective individuals are part of the excitement stream. It's slightly less accepted, slightly more frowned upon, but lights on, sex in the middle of a supermarket or in the middle of people in an exciting area. Person with the collective stream is just down for it anywhere, even though it's kind of a little bit different. We're going to explain why. So the full channel of desire 3041, essentially nothing's going to happen in this stream until the spark of fantasy is sparked, illuminated, lit. That's the word. And ideally, this is a fantasy that can actually be fulfilled for these individuals. Gate 41 is the gate of sexual hunger, the design of fantasy. Those with this channel will fantasize, but don't necessarily need to fulfill their fantasy. It's going to be this constant pressure for wanting these new experiences, for wanting change, for wanting excitement, and to feel release through that fantasy. And on the other end of this is gate 30, the gate of sexual feelings. So having this desire for yearning and clinging to that fantasy is really important for these individuals. They actually do need to experience it. It's not just a fantasy, it's not just the buildup, it's the actual, like, they want it to happen and yearning to that something or that someone until it is fulfilled for them. The yin and the yang of this channel. Those who have the fantasies don't necessarily need them fulfilled versus those who have this desire, those feelings for it, and actually do need it fulfilled.
Yeah, I find this one really interesting as well when I see this in clients. I often recommend the 41 to just write down their fantasies. They don't need to go out and experience it. And even the 30th gate individuals, yes, they feel more of the pressure to want to fulfill it, but they still need to wait for clarity. They really, really, really need to wait for clarity to truly experience the right type of situation, because if not, it can lead to a lot of challenges. And I would like to actually take a married couple as an example, just because I think communication is one of the most important aspects in a relationship. And what can happen if one of the partners has gate 30 is that they are in this marriage for years and years and years, but they may actually fantasize about someone that they work with, someone that is close to them, and they may have this fantasy and they may really, really cling to this fantasy. So they don't want to release this fantasy. And they won't be able to release this fantasy until they actually sleep with that person. It doesn't mean that you have to. It's just, again, a mechanics. And it's important to recognize this mechanic. And if you really do want to fulfill this fantasy, then talk to your partner. And I know this is very controversial, but I believe this is the best strategy. So this is super important in relationships, especially if you're going for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of marriage. And you feel this deep, deep, deep longing and desire. It's just a better strategy to talk to your partner about it than to suffer for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. My personal opinion, I know that not everyone is going to have such relationships. And maybe even just simply expressing that to your partner can already feel like a sense of relief. Most of the time, we build things up in our heads, and in the end, it's not going to be the way that we build it up. This can be for the good as well as for the bad in our life. So the things that we think are going to happen, the boundaries that we set ourselves, or the limitations that we set ourselves because we are scared that something could happen, 95% of the time, it's not happening this way. It's not happening the way that you're worried it's going to happen. Same with fantasies. Fantasies are an imagination. We think we can take the other person into account into our fantasy, but in the end, the way that the other person is going to react is going to be different most of the time. So yeah, fantasies is an interesting one. You want to take us up the stream further?
Row, row, row the boat. I got you.
Oh.
So we're going up to the 36, 35. I've never said it like that. I always say 35, 36. That's the direction that we're going, upstream. So this is the channel of sexual talent. Simply the excitement of the possibility of what is different and what sparks in this channel. There's no need for sweet words. There's no need for bargains. It's just what can be is what gets this person stoked. So this stream is all about those new experiences, and it's not about repeating something over and over again, like the 1648 channel. It wants to try things once, and it's like, okay, cool. We've experienced this. Let's move on to something different. Let's experience something new. All right, gate 36, the gate of crisis, a design of inexperience. So these are the ones who must penetrate and or thus get penetrated. So if you're down for it, go for it. If you're not down for it, you're not getting penetrated. I knew it was going to happen once this episode. I'm happy it happened right now. So the genetic kind of breakdown of this gate is someone wants that experimentation, someone wants that diversity, which could then lead to having a one night stand and then that leading to a baby with this person. Anything else that
Crisis.
you want to add on? Is it a crisis?
Yeah, crisis. Basically leading to crisis.
Oh, leading to a crisis. Unless you want the baby and you like the one night stand, then is it a
Sure.
crisis? It's a baby. Sure.
It's a baby. No, I'm talking about crisis because it's the gate of crisis. And the gate of crisis often creates crises
Sure.
in yourself or in your own life or in the other person's life, which is why your decision making process is extremely important. Again, we mention it because if you're going to enter into a relationship, and a relationship in this case, I'm also referring to a one night stand because you're kind of interacting with someone, even though
Penetration.
there's penetration. So even if it doesn't lead to a proper long term relationship, it's still a form of relationship. So really bear in mind who you sleep with, just generally, also like from a human design perspective, there could be a baby that comes out of it, but also from an energetic perspective, it just stays with you. The energy of the other person stays with you for quite some time. And even the sperm, if you're a woman, can stay in you for quite some time. Just many disclaimers here. I feel like I think we should write the disclaimers for condom packaging.
All human design related. Do you have this gate? Wear a condom. Do you have this gate? Also wear a condom.
Yeah, this channel, definitely wear a condom. Okay, so taking gate 6 back into consideration, again, it's the emotional wave. So depending if you're in a high or in a low, it makes a difference. That's especially if you're an emotional being or if you're connecting with someone and you're becoming emotional in nature. Just make sure that you are waiting out the wave. Otherwise, it can lead to crisis, as we mentioned. And here we are now entering into the completion of the fantasy. So this is where you actually have sex. And if your fantasy is sexual in nature, but we're talking about the sexual elements here. So sexually related fantasies in gate 36, this is where they come to completion. And this is where it is about an inexperience. It is about trying things out, trying new things all the time. It is not about trying something, as Celestina mentioned, channel 1648 on the flip side. So every channel that you will see on one side of the gate is mirroring as well insights on the other side of the human design body graph. And if you're looking at the mandala around it, you can also see a correlation between one side of the mandala, so in this case gate 36, and on the other side we have gate 6. So they are extremely deeply connected and they mirror each other. So you will be able to find solutions in one of your gates when you're looking at the mandala. In this case, gate 36, you can look at gate 6 and find more insights in gate 6. Gate 36 wants to try out new things, and it's really about trying something new all the time because it wants to gain more experience. It's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none kind of situation, whereas channel 1648 is focus on one skill that you want to improve, and you do that over and over and over and over again. You just focus on it. You don't try new things all the time. Gate 36 is the opposite. It's really about, I try everything, I want to try it once. Whereas gate 35 gets bored at some point. It's like, yeah, I've been there, done that, don't want to do it again. It's also the manifestation or the voice of sex. Just as gate 12 is the voice of the individual circuitry, gate 35 is the voice of the collective circuitry. So we're not going to go into each of the individual voices because this has been a very long episode with lots of bloopers. It was a very fun episode though, and I hope that you listener also gained a bit of an understanding, just bear in mind again that this is mechanics, this is genetics, this is what your body wants and needs, and it's not going to be something that you can decide with your mind. That's for sure. You're not going to be able to be like, okay, yeah, I have to be like this, I have to be like that. No. Additionally to that, the gates that we described have lines that play a role, that matter a lot in how you express it. The way that your centers are defined or undefined matters. The rest of your chart matters. The planets that are defining these gates and lines matter. So it's not a decision that you can make with the mind. It is only something that will fall into place when you enter relationships correctly by using your strategy and your inner authority.
Beautifully said, beautifully rounded out. And I think we're done for this week. So next week we'll be talking about the other side of the human design chart, more connected to values and nourishment. Until then, if you listen, be sure you're subscribed wherever you listen, whether that's on YouTube or Spotify or literally wherever you listen and or watch. If you enjoy this episode, give us a thumbs up. If you don't like it, just don't give us a thumb down. That'd be greatly appreciated. Keep it neutral. Keep it neutral. That'd be fantastic. We really appreciate that too. Share this with your friends. If you are talking with anyone else in your life about human design and you're like, yo, you gotta check out this episode. This is the episode to introduce them to, right? I feel like people get hooked on sex and they're like, ooh, I like them. So introduce them to this episode. Share it with your friends, share it with your peeps, share it with your mom, your dad, maybe your mom and your dad, but share it with the people in your world, and we'd greatly appreciate that. Until next week, guys. Ciao.
Bye, everyone. HeartCore, the Human Design Podcast.
You say Mercury's in retrograde?
No, it's over. Good boy. That's a good boy.
Whole ego circuitry is a stream. Oh my God, a stream of sensitivity. The whole ego circuitry is a stream of sensitivity. The whole ego circuitry is the whole tribal circuitry. The entire tribal circuitry is the stream of sensitivity. I have to do that again.
No, this is not an option, Ananda. Ananda, you're gonna have to leave the bed. You have to leave the bed. Oh my God, he put his paw on my arm. Can you see this? Oh my God, this is so cute. He doesn't normally do that. I mean, he really knows how to melt my heart. Be like, no, I gotta be on this bed. I mean, it's not even a real bed. It's on the floor. My love, you have to go back to your bed. It's also on the floor. It's the same thing. Just that it makes more noise at the moment. Nein, auf den Platz. Okay, I gotta handle this situation real quick.
I can't hear you. Your mic is off. Just let him love you.
You have something to say?
Bites. Main character energy. He said, Mom, I heard you introduce me to the podcast for the first time, so I'm going to be on your podcast now.